Welcome guys. In this video we are going to look at how to write an argumentative composition in English paper 1. Now before we look at that, I want us to look at 5 advanced words that we can add to our English or everyday English vocabulary. So for the first one, we have the word gig. So the word gig simply means a live musical performance or a concert. So we are looking at a scenario where maybe you call a band of musicians and they come maybe at your school, then they give you a live musical performance. So that is what we call a gig. For example, I have just bought tickets for the Coldplay gig in September. So this one, we are told that there is a gig that is coming in September, and I have bought tickets in preparation for that gig. Now we need also to understand the type of music that is performed under gig. So we have music like pop, rock or jazz rather than classical musical performance. Right, so we can move on to number 2. So number 2 is coming from the C1 level vocabulary. So one thing that you need to know is English has levels. It depends on the level that we are. So if you are on C level vocabulary, you should be able to know the meaning. So we have number 2, which is the 8th one, cling. So cling simply means to hold on to something tightly, like you hold on to somebody's arm, maybe shoulder. So it can mean in such a manner. For example, he always clings to his girlfriend's arm when they watch horror movies or films together. So this simply means that the man always holds on to his girlfriend's arm when they watch horror films together. So this can be because the guy is afraid of the scenes from the horror movies. Then cling can also be used as an adjective, where you can call someone as a cling person. So this one describes a person who depends on another person too much and lacks independence. So it's where you depend on someone, maybe for money, maybe for food, whatever, and because of too much depending on that person, then you lack independence. You are not independent, which simply means also you can't survive on your own. For example, we have Sarah is a clean child. She never leaves her mother's side, which means that wherever her mother is, so is Sarah. So you can add on to your vocabulary bank, cleans. So let's move on to number 3, which is number 9. So number 3 is coming from the C level vocabulary. So the word is gabble. So gabble simply means to speak quickly and unintelligibly. For example, let's say you are called for an interview, and because you are called for an interview, you become nervous, and since you are nervous, you fail to speak the way you should speak. So for example, we are told he got nervous in the interview and started to gabble. So you start to speak quickly, maybe because you lack confidence. Then in terms of the use, gabble is often used with the preposition on and aware. So for example, I have to admit I tend to gabble on a bit about Spain. So let's move on to number 10. So number 10, which is our 4th one. So number 10 is gaslight. So gaslight simply means to manipulate someone psychologically. So where you play with someone's maybe emotions or mind, that is to manipulate. or you use the emotion in order to convince someone that what you are doing or saying is correct. So let's look at an example. The boss made a mistake. So the one that made a mistake was the boss. Now the boss used his or our position and did what? Gaslighted this person in thinking that that person is faulty. So the boss made a mistake and then gaslighted me into thinking it was my fault. So that is manipulation. You make a mistake, but you put it on somebody's thinking. So you made them feel guilty as if they are the one with that mistake. Then we can say the term gaslight now comes from 1930s British play Gaslight, in which a man manipulates his wife into believing she has a mental illness. So you play with somebody's mind, you make them feel as if they are the one with a problem. That is to gaslight or to manipulate. So once I wrote gaslighted in my example, not gaslit. That's a common mistake. So in terms of past tense, we don't have to say gaslit. It has to be gaslighted. So to gaslight simply means to manipulate. So you can say I was gaslighted in believing that I was the one at fault. It can be in a relationship or in a family relationship, romantic relationship, maybe just a friendship relationship. It can be any. Right, so we move on to number 11, which is the fifth one, the last one for this one. So we have the word gust. So gust, we are not talking about the ghost that you know. So the meaning of the word ghosty simply means to abruptly end communication without explanation. Let's say you have a family member. It can be a family member, a friend. Let's say for years the communication is going wonderful. You are communicating, you are chatting, then all of a sudden the communication ends, and from there maybe you stop communicating and you lose that connection that you may be having. So for example, we chatted online for over a year and then she completely ghosted me. So it simply means she completely ended our communication without even a notice. So to ghost is a relatively new term often used in the context of online relationship or dating, but it can also apply to friendship or professional relationships. So this is what I had for the first advanced words. Right, now let's move on to writing what we call the argumentative. So first we need to look at right, so we have discursive. So whenever you look at, or maybe as you are studying, you come across the word discursive composition, it's the same as an argumentative composition. Now we need to look at what are we supposed to write as we are dealing with such kind of composition. So number one, you need to look at the other names for this composition. So number one, we are saying we can call it a discursive composition. So if not discursive composition, we can as well call it an argumentative composition. So I'm sure we are familiar with the word argumentative. If not argumentative composition, we can also call this one as a persuasive composition. So the word persuasive is coming from the word persuade. So to pursue, trying to make someone to convince with what you are saying. So we have persuasive composition, or you may also call it a controversial writing. So this is what you need to know now. In a discursive composition, the writer usually arrives at a conclusion by reasoning. So the purpose of a discursive composition is to convince or to persuade. So that is what you need to know. So we need to know that this is written to convince. To convince about what? Maybe for a certain motion. So to convince or persuade someone. So that is the importance of such kind of composition. So you just want to convince or to persuade the reader to accept or agree with the writer's views. To accept or to agree of what you are saying is true. Now, the writer's opinion tries to make the readers agree with it, change their opinion. So your focus is you want to change somebody's opinion, and you want them to take an action. You want them to take your side. You want them to see that what you are saying or your side is true. We know, and I'm sure we've been in an argument. So you may argue about maybe football. You may support this team, then the other person is supporting that. That's also an argument. Then each supporter will try to give as many points as possible in trying to convince or to persuade the other person to believe that their team is the best team, or their let's say players or player is the best of all. So the whole argumentative composition is about convincing someone or trying to pursue that person in believing of what you are saying is true. If that is the case, then we also have to know that an argumentative composition has two sides. So has two sides, of which you need to take one side that you think will be in your favor. Now, even if the composition is about you take one side, you need to look at the two sides. So the two sides can be, you can choose the side of to argue for, or number two, you can choose the side to argue against. So for this one, we can say examining both sides of the argument. You have to do that before you write this type of a composition. So whenever you're given such a statement or a motion, you need to plan before you start writing your composition. You plan. So we can say to every argument, there are two sides. When writing an argument, there are two sides. However, do not gather facts to support the chosen side only. So when gathering the points, you need to make sure that you gather points on both sides. Then when writing your final composition, that is when you need to look at the side that has more advantages than the other. So you need to make sure you do that. Then number 3, we need also to focus on use of let's say powerful and compelling cohesive devices. So what do we mean if we say by this? So here is where you come up with maybe sentences, phrases, something that you can make someone to agree with you. For example, we can say, it goes without saying that. You can start by saying that, or if want, we can say, it is my strong contention that. It is my conviction that. I am convinced without any reasonable doubt that. So all these are what we call the powerful and compelling cohesive devices, sentences or phrases that can make someone to take your side. Then away from there, we have also what we call the pathos. So pathos is where you use like somehow manipulative ways. You use emotional ways so that someone can feel pity for you, so someone can be on your side. So we can say pathos is defined as the quality in something that makes people feel pity. It is an expression of pity. It involves using emotional languages that is designed to draw the reader in and make them feel for you. So that's what pathos is. For example, we can say, if my allowance isn't increased, I won't be able to go out with you. Then you explain. Number two, you can also say, you will never be satisfied in life if you don't seize this opportunity. That is also manipulation. And I'm sure we have so many manipulative or pathos where, for example, maybe in a relationship where someone comes like, if you lose me, you won't find someone better than me. So that's also a path. It's a manipulative way. Okay, what if maybe that person meets someone who is better than you? So that is also can be allowed to be used in order to get somebody's attention. Now let's look at an example so that we can have more insight on this. So we have a sample question and answer. So the question here, we have the uses to which science has been put today have caused more harm than good. Argue for or against this statement. So we are told science in terms of maybe making of phones, TVs, aeroplanes. We have science in agriculture. We have science in communication. Then everything, I'm sure we can see science. We're not talking about science in terms of the subject, no. We are looking at what science has brought, the items that we have made because of science. So from the statement, or the writer wanted to say science has brought more harm compared to good. So now, before we start answering our question, we need to look at which are we going to look at. So let's look at argue for. If you say you are going to take the part argue for, so to argue for simply means you agree with the emotion. You agree that what the emotion is saying is true. You are in support of the emotion. So you are supporting that science has brought more harm compared to good. Now, what if you argue against? So to argue against simply means you disagree. You are not in support. So now, how can you disagree? You disagree by giving points that will convince someone to say, okay, what this person is saying is true. Now, if you look at if we agree or disagree, so which point are we going to look at? So let's look at disagree, because we can see the impact of science. There is a lot of benefits that we have gotten because of science. For example, communication. As I'm teaching using whatever that I'm using, it's because of science. So without science, I can't even make a video. I can't even make a lesson. We can't even learn online. We can't do anything without science. So despite the negative effects of science, like causing of cancer, where if you look at radioactivities, radiations, we know that those may cause cancer. So despite that, we have so many benefits of science. Now let's look at the introduction. So the introduction here, we can see science has been playing a very big role in the world. So it's not always that you're supposed to introduce a composition like this one by say, I know we usually say, I totally disagree, I totally agree. No, sometimes you can start by this. So science has been playing a very big role in the world. In view of its evident impact in such fields as communication, so we have communication, then we have agriculture, medicine, and many other disciplines of life, it can be argued that the use of science today has caused more good than harm. Alright, so we want to defend that science has caused more good. So let's look at the first defense that we can give so that people can be on our side. So let's begin with in medicine. So we can say in medicine, for instance, the exploitation of radioisotopes has led to possible cure for cancer. Radioactivity is used to kill cancer cell affected by cancer so that it cannot be spread to other body tissues. So we have given that. So this is the first point that you have given. You've talked about the importance of science in line with medicine. Let's go in terms of communication. So in telecommunication, science has greatly reduced the world. So this simply means that because of science, we are able to come up with one community. For example, we are able to communicate. We can, let's say, have a live lesson with people in different areas, maybe different countries at once. So it's because of science that has brought people of different, let's say, races, countries, come together as one through communication. I'm able to communicate with someone who is maybe abroad, overseas, because of science. In olden days, it is used to take weeks for somebody in Kitwe to get in touch with another person in Sweden by mail. However, computer technologies now offers the reliable email service. By this mode of communication, one can send his message to any destination on Earth within seconds. So we have looked at point number 2, where we've looked at the importance of science in line with the communication. Let's look at the importance of science now in terms of transportation. So it's because of science where we have now aeroplanes are also a result of application of science, and people can now go around the world within hours, can they? So this is the importance compared to if we are to use, let's say, road transport. It would be maybe taking years for someone to move from, let's say, Zambia maybe to Britain. But because of aeroplanes, it may take only hours for someone to travel. So this is another point number 3. Then let's look at in terms of agriculture. Scientists have also exploited nature to make fertilizers. For example, they use science to make fertilizers, where we look at the reaction of hydrogen and nitrogen under the Haber process. That's science. These chemicals replace the soil fertility which modern crops such as maize, wheat, and other use up too quickly. So this is another third point. So as we can see, we are giving points that are defending our side, where we said no, science has caused more good than harm. Science has also brought about the hope of being able to read even in old age through the advent of spectacles. Is this not progressive? So we are looking at in older age where we can use spectacles for someone who has, let's say, eyesight problem. So that person can at least be able to survive because of this. So this is another point number 5. You are defending. So the whole argumentative composition is about you defend your stance throughout your composition. But as you are doing that, you need also to look at the other point. Then we have another paragraph. Although the discovery of radioactivity led to making of atomic bombs, the initial intention of this technology was good. Scientists meant to take advantage of the colossal amount of energy in form of heat which radioactive reactions are capable of producing. To generate electricity, the heat is used to heat up water, and the steam thus drives turbines which rotates the generators, thereby producing electricity. So we are saying even if at times the suns can be used to make bombs that can be used to destroy the world, even the living things, the intention of that was not to make bombs. Bombs was just like the byproduct. So this is another point, number 6, in which you are defending your stance. Then let's look at in conclusion. So as you are giving conclusion, make sure that whatever that you are going to write in conclusion must be in line with your stance. So you can say, in conclusion, it can be argued that although the various uses to which science has been put today have had bad side effects on animal life and the environment, the positive effects have by far overridden the bad one. So this is how you can come up with an argumentative. So remember, an argumentative is just a composition where you try to persuade someone to believe or to be convinced that your side or what you are saying is true by giving factual points. So that's it for this video. If you find this video interesting, give it a like, subscribe, and share with families and friends. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.